Thomas Reynolds always felt that his house on the outskirts of Livenford hid something sinister. The old Victorian building was surrounded by a forest, the trees of which seemed unnaturally tall and gloomy, especially on moonlit nights. However, the real oddities began when he decided to explore that part of the forest that the locals called the Cursed Forest. As a child, his parents warned him against walking into that part of the forest. They said that there, among the ancient trees, lay a cemetery where not just the dead rested, but the cursed. Thomas didn't believe these tales and once decided to check for himself. When he was 12, he ventured deep into the forest and discovered an old sign on one of the trees with a warning, "Do not enter. Do not wake the dead." Then he turned back, but that moment stayed in his memory forever. Years later, when Thomas was in his 30s, he returned to Livenford to start a new life after his divorce. He settled in his parents' old house, trying to find peace. However, his curiosity about the cursed forest had not faded. One October evening, he decided to return to the place he hadn't dared to enter for many years. Taking a lantern and armed with a jacket, he headed into the forest. Leaves crunched under his feet, and the wind howled like a wolf. After several miles, he stumbled upon an old fence. The stone posts were covered in moss, and the metal bars were rusted and broken from time. This was the cemetery. Entering the grounds, Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. Low mist lay over the ground, hiding the gravestones, many of which were overturned or broken. He illuminated his path with the lantern, studying the faded inscriptions on the tombstones. Some names seemed familiar, as if he had seen them in the town museum's archives. Suddenly, he noticed a strange structure in the center of the cemetery, resembling a chapel. Approaching closer, he realized it was a crypt. The stone door was half open, as if inviting him in. Hesitating but overcoming his fear, Thomas carefully opened the door wider and stepped inside. Inside it was dark and damp, the air thick with the smell of mold and decay. The lantern illuminated the tombs lined along the walls. Some of them were opened, with skeletal hands and legs protruding from within. Thomas felt his heart beat faster. Suddenly, he heard a whisper. At first, he thought it was the wind outside the crypt walls, but the whisper grew louder and clearer. The voices, speaking in an unknown language, seemed to come from the very floor. Thomas realized these were the voices of the dead, the cursed, those who were warned not to be awakened. He tried to leave the crypt, but the door slammed shut before his face. Panic gripped him, and he began to pound on the door, shouting for help. But no one could hear his cries in this forsaken place. The voices grew louder, as if they were trying to tell him their stories, their sufferings and horrors they endured in life and after death. Thomas felt cold hands grabbing his ankles, pulling him down. He fought, trying to break free, but his strength was failing him. Suddenly, the floor beneath him gave way, and he fell into darkness. The fall seemed endless until he hit the hard ground. The lantern shattered, plunging him into absolute darkness. He didn't know how much time had passed when he finally came to. Around him were only bones and darkness. Thomas realized he was in an underground chamber beneath the cemetery, among those who had been buried alive or cursed to eternal torment. He tried to find a way out, feeling the walls in the dark. His hands touched wet stone and remnants of someone's bones. The voices whispered again, this time directly in his head, merging into one nightmarish chorus. They demanded that he stay with them, become one of them. Thomas fought against madness, trying not to succumb to the voices. He remembered the old tales about ancient rituals and curses, about how the souls of the dead were chained in this place, unable to find peace. He knew he had to find a way out, or else he would share their fate. Finally, he found a staircase leading upwards. Struggling to climb the slippery steps, he heard the creak of a door. A faint sliver of light appeared. With his last strength, Thomas reached the top and, opening the door, stepped outside. The fresh air burned his lungs, and the moonlight blinded him. He fell to his knees, feeling tears stream down his cheeks. He was free, but the dead did not release him. The whispers still echoed in his head, reminding him of those he had disturbed. Thomas returned home, but found no peace. The nights became torture for him. He saw the faces of the dead in his dreams, heard their voices. They came to him, demanding he return and finish what he had started. His life turned into hell. A few months later, he was found dead in his own home. His face was frozen in a grimace of horror, and there wasn't a single scratch on his body. The locals said he became another victim of the cursed forest. The Reynolds house stood empty once more, and the forest continued to keep its dark secrets. But the people of Livenford knew one thing: no one should enter the cursed forest, especially on nights when the moon is hidden behind clouds and the voices of the dead become particularly loud.